She's the Group Executive Director of Equity Group Holdings and the Non-Executive Director in the boards of FinServe Africa Limited, Equity Group Foundation, Equity Investment Bank, Equity Bank in Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and BCDC in Congo. Before her promotion to Executive Director, she served as a Group Company Secretary and Director of Corporate Strategy of Equity Group Holdings. She has more than 28 years experience in the legal practice, strategy, and banking, and has led many impactful business transformations since it began in the early 90s. So Mary, will be looking to hear your story around the transformation business and where you're taking equity going forward. So Mary holds an LLB degree from the University of Nairobi, Masters in Leadership, Innovation, and Change from New York. She is also a trustee and a certified retirement benefits trustee mandated by Retirement Benefits Authority, amongst other professional bodies. She currently serves as the trustee of Equity's Employee Share Ownership Plan and the chairperson of Equity Group Holdings PSC Staff Pension Scheme.
I think we lost Rose. Yeah. As we get her back, Miss Catherine, welcome.
Thank you very much, Hannah. As we wait for Rose to come in, allow me just to appreciate two ladies, Gail and Alice. It is ungodly hours where they are, but they have chosen to come in. I don't take that for granted. It's just to thank you so much for being a friend of this network and for waking up so early when you shouldn't be awake to share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and looking forward to you coming back to Kenya, Alice, and Gail. Looking forward to hosting you.
All right, I keep looking for, all right, I'm waiting for the moment.
Oh. Awesome. We definitely will make that happen very soon.
Right.
Oh, I truly enjoy it.
I haven't been in Kenya for 30 years.
Oh my goodness, you need to come back. You will not find your way. We will have to hold your hand.
Right, I'm sure it is. I was there in the 70s and the 80s, but I think I haven't been there since like 1990 or 89, so a long time ago.
Oh my goodness. Hannah, please remind me when Rose has joined. Thank you. And Gail, perhaps you should launch your next book here in Kenya.
It sounds like fun. I would be happy to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Apologies for that, ladies. I seem to have gotten kicked out of the meeting, but I'm back now. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Alice Taylor Milton. She has more than 35 years of experience working with students of all ages and more than 26 years in an administrative capacity. Her specialty includes teaching or learning styles, educational leadership, infusing technology in various service areas, grant writing, amongst many others. So I'm sure Dr. Alice, we're looking forward to hearing how then we can reskill in the new world of globalization and digital disruption. So welcome to today's session. Our last speaker is Gail Evans. Gail is the author of Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman, a phenomenal bestseller that has quickly become a classic in its field. A former White House aide and CNN first female executive vice president, Evans was responsible for creating some of CNN's most successful shows. She currently lectures around the country, mentoring and teaching women of all ages and business backgrounds how to get ahead in today's corporate world. So Gail, we looking forward to hearing how it is that we should play like a man, but actually act like a woman. So it'll be interesting to hear a little bit about your experience in that field. You know, the former president of the United States, Dr. Barack Obama, is actually one of our cousins here. You know, in Kenya, everybody is related. And so, you know, we'll be looking forward to hearing about the White House and what that space looks like, having interacted, you know, within the male zone. So welcome all. Should be an interesting interaction this afternoon. And we're looking forward to listening to you, wonderful ladies, as you engage with us. So to set the scene of today's session, allow me to request Kantai to play a short video around what the future of globalization looks like, and then we can get into the discussion. We promise you no PowerPoint presentation this afternoon, so it will just be pure case studies, pure engagement, and a few videos as an interlude. So Kantai, over to you. Some sound, please. Not yet, Kantai, we can't hear that. So just a moment, ladies, we should be playing that very, very quickly.
Close your eyes.
Sorry.
How many of
Well, I believe that sets the scene for our conversation this afternoon. So we'll start off with Mary. Now we've had globalization will be about the things that we do, not necessarily the things that we produce. And reading about the Equity story, you know, set up as a building society, almost went bankrupt in 1993. And then, you know, you brought in new management. And here we are, biggest bank in Kenya, a net profit of about 28 billion. 8 billion of that is coming from out of the country. So talk to us about that transformation journey and what it has meant, the journey, that the challenges that you have had to experience rising to the top to get to where you need to go in terms of, you know, that level of profitability and the leadership that you've held within Equity Bank. So tell us about your story, Mary.
Yeah, I guess you can hear me now. Thank you so much. It's very exciting because when I look back, for instance, and now some people get really shocked. I don't know whether they'll get shocked or excited, as we've been told, that I've been in equity for 20 years now. You know, when I tell people that, they ask, what? 20 years in one place? Don't you have any other place to go? And I'm like, wow. It is so exciting that I've never thought of anything else to do, because every day there's something new that happens in equity. And you can look at it in the context of the growth of the institution vis-a-vis the growth of the individuals in that institution, like myself as an example. And when you look at it, starting from insolvency, as Rose, you have rightly observed, in about 1993, almost shut down by the central bank, but then starting to re-engineer and reconfigure the business, because that is really what had to happen for Equity Bank to survive at that point in time. Otherwise, it would just have become another statistic of a failed institution. And when you look at the profile of the customers at that time, mostly rural farmers and no use or little use of technology, if any. Actually, what we called mobile banking at that time was literally a van transversing the villages to go and take cash, you know, to the communities there. And fast forward and look at it today, what are we calling mobile banking? We are actually calling mobile banking being able to do transactions on our phones. And what amazes me is when I travel, it doesn't matter where I am, whether I'm in New York, whether I'm in Europe, or whether I'm Kinshasa or anywhere else in Africa, I'm able to do my banking, everything, pay my bills, transfer money, whatever, move money across here and there, and several other services. And I think that is what we are talking about. So for us, we've seen a movement from not being somewhere you go. Banking is no longer somewhere you go. It is something that you do. And I think we have seen that in the video, that same concept of we are thinking about many things. When we also think about shopping now, we don't think about somewhere we go, because I will sit in my house or wherever I am in my office, order things, order lunch, order clothes, order beauty products, order everything, and they find me wherever I am. So the concept has changed very dramatically. And it's going to get very exciting, more and more exciting as we go along, because now our bank, for instance, has become a regional bank. We have customers, doing trade across the region, across many countries. So how will the banking services be rendered to these customers, the ones who are traversing the globe? Some of them are doing business across continents, not just within the continent. And it obviously will bring also some very, very serious and very complex questions. For instance, the settlements. How do you do settlements for these customers who are doing business across, across various countries, across various jurisdictions? And remember, you put that in the context of they are sovereign states. So when I go to Uganda, Uganda is a sovereign state. So how much leeway can they give me as a Kenyan bank, for instance, to introduce my policies? Or am I stuck, with the policies of the country where I have gone to? They have different regulators with different, there are many issues that are coming up. And I think we really need to be aware of that, even as we venture, into business, especially the businesses that are happening across the globe, whichever the part of the world we are in. Now, in terms of growth, I think I would say it's very exciting, because one of the things that I discovered in my journey is that we cannot also even start or continue thinking about our respective roles the same way we used to think about them 20 years ago. We need to evolve as the business is evolving, as the way people are doing business is evolving, as the way commerce is being done is evolving. So whether you are an accountant, whether you are an IT tech person, whether you are a HR person, Rose, I saw like you are in HR. The HR, the way it was done, 20 years ago, is not the same way it is going to be done today. The skills are different. The skills that we require today are different. So what that means is that even as we think about our career progression, we must take into account the changes that are happening in the industry and evolve accordingly. Otherwise, what will happen is we are going, take the case in point of the receptionist that we used to have 20 years ago. That I remember my first receptionist was a lady called Rose, like you, by the way. And she used to use a typewriter. And that typewriter, you could not even rub a document if you made a mistake. You had to use what we used to call, I think, whiteout or something. And the document was very untidy. When you make a mistake, you have to repeat the whole thing if it's going to be neat. And if she's not experienced, you can be on the same document a whole day, just trying to get it right. Now, fast forward to today. What skills are required? It's no longer someone who can use a typewriter. It is someone who is tech savvy. Now we are doing all communication, most communication on email. We are doing, the social media channels is where we are doing all our communication and blasts to customers, and you are able to get all the customers within just a click of a button. So a lot of things are evolving and changing. And one of the things that I would like the people also in the audience to be aware is that they have to change with the times, and their perspective of how they need to carry out their business has to change over time. Because what we have discovered in the bank is that unless you change yourself in time, you become totally irrelevant. And that is not something that either myself or yourself you want to become, because irrelevant is irrelevant, and it means death in career, aspirations, or your dreams will come to nothing. So we really must be aware that that's a real danger unless we do something about it. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you very much, Mary. You've covered a lot within that. I remember when I first tried to open a bank account sometime in '94, we would be told to go and get the chief to sign and indicate that, he actually knows you, and woe unto you if you didn't know any, then, you would not have a bank account. So we've come a long way within the banking sector. So thank you for your thoughts. Dr. Alice, you get to sit in the hot seat now. Mary talked about, the fact that in the new era, skills will play a critical role. She referred to Rose, who was previously using a typewriter. Now the receptionists we know sometimes are even virtual, don't exist within the office setting. So the war of talent is going to become very critical insofar as globalization is concerned. Perhaps using your experience within the teaching world, how do we reskill in the new era? What are some of the things we can do, especially as women, to be able to begin to play within that global field from a skills perspective? Sorry, Dr. Alice, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Well, I'm all for education, and everything that Mary said is totally true. You have to stay abreast of the new trends. You have to make sure that your skills are, you have the skill set that's ready for the workforce. And I noticed a trend, there's changing. I know in the United States, all I see in Alabama is help wanted. Now there's a difference. The employer is trying to sell themselves to the employee because of the pandemic, a lot of people love that flexibility of being at home, being with their family, seeing their children more. Everyone wants flexibility on the job. They want remote working conditions. So employers now are offering more, trying to sell themselves. They're trying to show them what do they have that's different from anyone else. And people now are going back to school to open up their own business because of that flexibility. They're getting certified online through some of the agencies. Udemy is one of them that, I bought a couple of those classes for my son that's getting certified in insurance sales. And then you have Coursera that you can certify yourself. And at the same time, that since everybody wants that remote experience, you're gonna have to offer just as much to that employer because everybody's now is trying to do that. So people are going back to school, learning more digital things, and they're learning, especially in the office setting, they're learning like Adobe Pro, DocuSign. And just like the video stated earlier, you don't have to be anywhere. You can be right at your station and do everything from your desk. Just by a DocuSign, people can do it digitally. And for us in the education, we had to think outside of the box. I always felt that the teachers in my department should be way ahead of the game. And it paid off during the pandemic because so many people were so shocked, and a lot of schools lost students because they were not prepared. We were prepared because we always taught our classes a variety of ways. And I know it was difficult sometimes trying to enforce change, even in an educational setting, but in technology, you have to be on the forefront. And so not only now do we offer online, but we offer the online and virtual. For those that don't know, the difference is that with virtual, you can be at home in front of your computer at your class starts at 5 o'clock. You have to be in front of your computer at 5 o'clock. That works for the people that still need to see the professor. But now you have people that want online. Online is it now because it gives that person, again, more flexibility that as long as they turn their work in on time, that's fine. And so I see with globalization, one big change is that now people can be educated anywhere in the world because they're doing it online. And even with the employers now, most people want people, diverse people, the multicultural people, and more experience coming in. If they're gonna pay you more, they want more. And so just like my sister, you know, she lives in Germany now. She felt that, you know, she teaches math and science there now. And so she felt most people are just mobile now. And so if we don't learn to change and learn more skills to be prepared, get those business skills to be entrepreneurs, we're gonna be left behind. So my thing is always enhance your learning in any way possible. Read more articles, get certified, and you don't have to pay for classes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like the class that I paid for my child is $30 American money with Udemy and even Coursera. It could be what, 300 shillings? That's very economical, and you actually get certificates. You're certified in that. Though a lot of people, and then I also read that we again, we have to be competitive in all areas. We have what is called prior learning experience. And I read that you have that in Kenya as well, that when you go and get educated online for yourself in the comfort of your home, you're certified. People use that for prior learning experience. It helps you to be not starting on step 1, but maybe step 5 or 6. And like in my area, if you have prior learning experience, that's about 5 or 6 classes that you don't have to take. So everybody, there's no excuse now for education, you know. So, you know, you just have to want to do that for yourself, you know. And so my thing is stay abreast, stay with the latest trends, join your organizations, keep going to conferences and learning new things, and to help better yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Alice. Stay abreast, keep learning. As you talked about Udemy, I know there's one other, the EDX. It's a World Bank, I think, funded education program. And you have all the leading schools such as Harvard, Stanford, you know, offering courses pretty much for free. So thank you for that. Very interesting thoughts. Gail, we are so excited to have you. It's interesting that I was actually reading Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman. And just to follow on with Dr. Alice's, you know, thoughts around reskilling, one of the things I noticed in your book is, you know, you say that in your conferences, you meet a lot of women who pretty much, you know, are baffled, they're angry, they're lost, they're trapped. They feel like they've gotten to the point where they're at the ceiling within their organization. And you talk about offering them some advice. So talk to us around what are some of the things that you're telling women to be able to get out there and unstuck themselves and look at the world, not necessarily from a glass ceiling, but through open skies, as Mike Eldon spoke a little earlier today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I agree with both Mary and Alice, so I'm not sure what more there is to add. But I do think one of the most important things that everybody needs to think about, but it's especially important in today's world for women, which is to take a risk. The technology and the learning has become the fundamental. If you want to get in the ballpark and play, you've got to have the fundamentals, and the technology is part of that fundamentals. But also, if you look at things like the IT world and the tech world, they're pretty flat organizations. That there are a lot of people who can do the same thing. And that's very good for a steady kind of job. But if you're going to rise through the ranks into leadership, you have to begin to take risks. And, they have to be calculated risks. I think the word that I've been using most when I speak lately and I work with big corporations is you need to be as intentional about your life and your career as every business is about where they're going and the rest. That what do you need to know? How do you develop that? And then are you willing to speak up and occasionally be wrong? Because it takes a lot of wrong ideas to get to the right one. Or do you play this safe kind of game where you don't speak unless you know you're right? And I think my biggest piece of advice for women is, if you aren't willing to risk being wrong, you'll never be a real player. And that's really how you sort out the difference between who has the big career and the big successes and who stays very safe. And I want to add one other quick thing, because I thought his presentation was interesting, although a little too, what should I say? It was very Western and not very global, I thought, in some kind of ways. But one of the things I think we have to think about when we think of globalization, because I think we've gotten to the service parts. I don't think globalization in any way is only about goods today. There are accountants in Warsaw who work for New York offices. There are accountants in Mumbai and in Nairobi and the rest. But I think that what we have to be thinking about in the big picture about globalization is that economists only count goods and services that are exchanged for money. That we're not yet an economy where there's a value applied to anything that isn't produced with money as the final end outcome. And globalization has brought a better life, to a wider swath of humanity than ever before. But there are still millions and millions of people who don't participate in that, but who participate in a non-money economy. And I think that's the place where globalization has huge opportunities, which we've only barely begun to touch. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, Gail. And we will be coming back to your book and your experience in CNN and the White House as well. So while you get your thoughts together around that space, allow me to touch base with Mary at this point. Mary, Africa is seen as the rising star. 1 billion people in the next couple of years. We've seen organizations like, Equity starting off in Kenya, moving on to Congo, conversations around moving on to South Africa. So almost globalizing your brand, but within the African context. So what are the opportunities for us as women, perhaps at a board level, perhaps at a business level, at a career level? What advice would you have for us in terms of moving into the African space? And speak to your experience, as probably one of the few ladies leading that transformation agenda within Equity.
Thank you once again, Rose. I can only say that the opportunities are massive because, and I think you've already talked about one of the aspects, and one of them is obviously being able to expand your customer segments. You're able to expand your market size just at the touch of a button, because if you look at equity, when we were in Kenya only, we are talking about a population of about, I think the latest is about 50 million, take or give a little bit. When you combine just the East African region that we have done now, that has multiplied to, including the DRC now, almost 400 million people. And then you're looking at a market now, if you take the case of DRC, for instance, a very low penetration kind of banking population. The statistics are still saying like we are only at about 5% of the banked population in a DRC, in a population of 110 million, and that's the unofficial statistics. So when you look at those kind of statistics, I can only see a bigger market. Now, if you're in manufacturing, or if you're in a fast-moving consumer goods, why would you not want to take your goods there? I mean, I'm telling my customers now that whether you are selling sweets or biscuits or juices or water or whatever, you can sell it in millions and millions in that market. And that is why you have seen that for those in this market and in the region, we are now taking a trade mission of our customers to the DRC, just to go and appreciate how big that market is and what a good potential it is for all kinds of businesses, be they fast-moving consumer or manufacturing businesses, or even services. So if you're in HR services, this is a growing economy. If you're in tech services, this is a growing economy. People need the innovations, they need the technology to be able to support a very fast-growing economy. And a lot of money is going into that market, both from the DFIs, the World Bank, just to try to rejig the economy after the tough times. Now, the downside is obviously that we still have to deal with some issues. Now, if you look at the size of minerals, because and I would again give the case of DRC, the prices of copper, for instance, have moved from 4,000 USD per ton in 2018 or 2019. I don't have the exact figures, and it has multiplied 4 times to 20,000. And I mean, where else would you want to be? Things like cobalt. Cobalt is used for the manufacture of the phone, the chips on the phone, the ones that are used to make the phone, that chip. And so you can imagine the demand, and the market is, I mean, they cannot satisfy the demand. So just imagine what will happen in the next few years. If your business is not there, then it's gonna become irrelevant. And that is why you can see, as equity, we said, this is a market that we really must be. And that is what informed the decisions that we have made in the recent past of going into that market. So for me, it's opportunities, where at the same time, obviously, understanding the threats. But I think Alice has also talked about, turning the threats into an opportunity, for creating new businesses. If you haven't thought about diversifying your business lines, especially as a recovery measure against COVID, because COVID has also disrupted the way we do things. And some of our business models are going to become very irrelevant post-COVID. So this is the time for us to rethink, the business models, diversify into new segments. Gail has also told us that you must take your risk now. And that risk might involve actually stopping what you used to do last year before March when COVID hit, and starting a completely new line of business that is going to give you some sensible incomes and a good market. So we are thinking about all that, and we are encouraging our customers to do that, because we feel that the opportunity is huge. I would also, if you allow me, just talk about the cross-border trade and the treaties that are now being emphasized, and the governments are coming together to say, can we trade more between our countries, so that instead of looking at markets out there in other continents, can we do our cross-border trades right here? But we need to work on the infrastructure. And that is why you can see most of the countries are now focusing on building their infrastructure, the railways, the roads, and Kenya is a very good example of that. We are complaining, money has gone, we are borrowing too much, but there's no gain without pain. And that is what the governments are doing. And we are hoping that in the next few years, it will be very easy to move your goods from the industrial area of Nairobi or Kampala, if that is where you operate from, to Kinshasa or Lubumbashi, or even Zambia, depending on what you're selling. So that's the idea. So it is upon us to look at that as an opportunity, but also be aware of the threats and the risks that may be involved. But you see, unless we are willing to take the risk, we entered the DRC market when they were still unclear about the political direction. In fact, I can also say that that was one of the most difficult approvals that we struggled to get from our board, because they were asking, what is the rationale of going to this market, which is still not very clear. They are still having their own internal disagreements. How is that country going to be? But we said we want to look at that as a short-term obstacle. We are looking at it as a long-term opportunity. We know they will find peace. And when peace is found, it will be a huge opportunity. And they said, okay, fine, okay, because you're not asking for a lot of money. That was 2015, we'll allow you. And I can tell you, we have not looked back. So we need to take that position where we say, I believe this is the right decision to make. There might be a risk here and there, but I will mitigate the risk, but take the risk all the same. And most of those decisions will pay off so long as we are prepared. But we take calculated risk, as Gail Evans has actually just advised us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Take the risk, but mitigate it as well.
Mm.
So moving on with that discussion, Dr. Alice, Mary sort of set the scene around the opportunities that perhaps Africa presents insofar as business is concerned, insofar as the customer base. So I'm sitting here as a lady in a small organization in Africa, and I'm looking for board opportunities outside of our borders. So what would be your advice insofar as looking out for those opportunities, preparing to take on those opportunities when they arise, and perhaps going to look for them? What would be your view? Sorry, Dr. Alice, you're on mute again.
Sorry about that for a second. I would say, again, educate yourself, because like when I've had to get off 3 boards, because, it's just like a job, but boards are looking for individuals that have a lot to offer them to help them to grow. Like, again, I think the pandemic taught everyone to think outside of the box. And I've noticed that, just like Mary was stating with the online banking, it has spoiled all of us. I hate even getting out the car and going into one now, because I'm just totally spoiled. And just like Gail says, take the risk. Look at your business. And if you want to get on board, learn how to change your business to social media, to the web, to e-commerce. That's how you can reach global as fast as possible. I'm taking all of my products, I'm putting it on the web, where instead of people coming to us personally, they're going to you on the web. Even people taking tours now, they're going virtually and they're still paying the same thing or more. So you want to learn all those things to make those businesses more technical inclined, more digital. And when corporations see that you have a lot to offer them, they're going to be asking you, they're going to be calling you. You don't have to go out and look for them. Trust me on that one, because they're looking for growth. They're looking for people to help them keep their money. Because again, I can't to keep stressing on the pandemic. People wasn't getting ready for the future. And so it was a shock to them. A lot of people lost their businesses. Whereas people that kept going to meetings, going to conferences and meeting new people, networking, they instantly went from brick and mortar to e-commerce. They didn't, and as a matter of fact, they're making more money. So, you know, you had to learn how to think outside of the box. If I wanted a new board member, I would look at their credentials and see, hey, they did this year, last year, this year, but if the last time you went for something for professional development was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't want that person. They don't have a lot to offer me. You got to keep up to date with the latest trends and have a lot to offer that particular corporation. When they see that, you'll be turning them down. Trust me on that one. So, you know, again, keep up with your skills, know the latest trends, know how to digitize. And I think that you will be on more boards than you can handle.
Dr. Alice. So keeping up with the digital trends is what I'm hearing is a common thread, you know, coming through. So Gal, let's talk a little bit about your book, Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman. You know, reading your book, you talk about your experience within CNN, as well as, you know, being one of the aides, you know, at the White House. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like, because all I can imagine is, you know, a male-dominated space. You probably working twice as hard to, you know, get noticed. What was that like, and what did you learn out of that process to get to the point where you actually wrote, you know, the rules of the game?
Well, it's actually interesting, seeing as the book is now 2 decades old. It's a little scary to me that we're even still talking about it, which speaks to the lack of progress in some ways for women, even though there's been a lot of positive progress. I think that the main lesson, I think, the first one I learned is the last line of the book should have been, if you learn to play like a man and win like a woman, someday you'll be able to play like a woman and win like a man in terms of economic reward. But I think that the lessons that I learned in all those places are pretty universal. One of them is about language. And that is, it is really true that you are who you say you are. And a lot of the way women have learned to verbalize is to talk about themselves. Like the first word, if you ask women all over the world, you know, what's the value? What are you as a, you know, in the workplace, is they always say hardworking. And hardworking to me is an assumption. Of course, you work hard, you know, you get the job done well and the rest, but it really does speak to drudgery. It doesn't speak to power and leadership. And so I always say to women, you know, what are the 3 words that people say about you when you're not in the room? That's the brand you have. And that brand gets you on boards, it gets you promotions and all the rest. And hardworking is not the word. You know, it's very interesting. When you look at all the research, it shows that the words about women frequently are hardworking, loyal, dedicated, collaborative. And the words that people use about men and that men use are, they have leadership potential, they're strategic, and they're go-getters. And that's how we talk about ourselves. So yes, we want to remain women and fully centered in who we are as women. But I think we have to learn to begin to do, I say to people, we don't want to toot our own horn. That's not very pleasant, but we need to learn to become our own public relations people. In the marketplace as it exists today, you don't get ahead by being self-deprecating. You have to make sure that people know you are there. And a lot of that is merely the language that you use about yourself and that other people use about you. Does that language speak to going ahead in the future, or does that language speak to where you've been before or where you are? And I think it's something that you have to always keep thinking about, is that, you know, am I doing the subtle public relations work for myself to make sure I show up on everybody's list? Also, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about lately is we spend a lot of time as women asking why something went wrong. Why did this happen? What's all the whys of the circumstances, especially in the business context when something doesn't work out the way we want it? I think that we have to let go of why, which is about the past and tends to beat ourselves up anyway, and start thinking about the what. What happened to cause this? And therefore, what's the lesson I need to learn going to the future? Not spend all the time in why, which always has something to do with you, and really blame and the rest. So it's like moving to what happened and then what do I learn from it, and where do I go ahead, rather than why did all this occur. And then I think sort of the final one is to learn to make a request to see what's possible. A lot of times we assume that the people around us know what we want. I'm always very struck that when women talk, and men do this too, but women do it more often. When women talk about going in for their annual review or whatever else, they always talk about what they deserve. And deserve is a big word that gets used in female language in the workplace. And I say, you know, deserve is a one up, one down kind of word. You go in and thinking about what you deserve, you're already making somebody else wrong. That's not a really, I mean, Mary can certainly tell you this, that's not a good place for negotiation. You don't start assuming the other person's wrong if you actually want to get to a negotiated settlement that everybody is happy with. That we have to move from what we deserve to what we want. When you talk about what you want, you're having a clean conversation. And I just think all of those things become very, very important. And I've spent my entire career, I never had the opportunity to work for a woman just because of my age, which is very old. And I always worked in places where I was the only woman in the room. I think that's a lonely place. I think our job as women is to ensure there are more women in the room, and not just one or two, but we need three. And that's an especially important thing when you think about the corporate board world, is you need 3 women in the room to have critical mass for the women being there to really count. And so we need to be there to support each other. That's part of the risk taking too, is, if you're there, are you bringing somebody like you along? Because that's how we begin to change the nature of leadership. So those are my first thoughts, Rose.
Thank you, Gail. Let's bring other women along and have at least 3 of us within the room. So that's interesting. So back to you, Mary. We live in a very cultural setting, especially Africa. And, looking at your 26 years, within the banking sector, possibly sometimes having been the only African woman sitting around the table, what have have been some of the things that you have learned? Perhaps mistakes that you've made that you've learned from, or areas that you have struggled to navigate and have perhaps found a mentor to help you walk that journey? Because I'm sure there's a lady who's in that space right here and would like to hear, sort of some practical aspects of how you've navigated those minefields as an executive.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's and before I go to that, just going back to the previous point, I think we also need to think about the issue of the capital flow, which is actually a direct result from of globalization. There's a lot of money coming into this continent. So ladies, if you have a business, you debt, equity, please, this is the time for you to look at that, because there's a lot of money flowing into the continent, and that is just because of what Rose said. Africa is rising. Now, to this specific question, I think there's an issue of socialization, and I think Gail has talked about it to some extent. And for us who are Africans, we know that there's the model of an African woman, and an African woman behaves in a certain way and does not talk much. There's the concept of don't talk until you are spoken to. And when we take that to the workplace, because that is how we have been brought up, then it becomes a serious challenge, because then we cannot do what you told us to do, Gail, speak up, because that's really not me. That's not how I'm supposed. It's not appropriate for me to do that. So I would say that that is one of the obstacles that I personally have observed in my journey, reconciling that cultural view of how I should behave like a woman, and what the expectation of my role as a director is. Should I argue with my male chairman, or with my male CEO, or with my male director colleague, and that is a specific issue that we have in this continent, that we probably don't have in other continents. Like I know the Americans are definitely way ahead on that. They have been brought up very, very, and socialized very differently in most of the cases. So I would say that that's one of the issues that I've had to deal with. And that has actually been one of my self-improvement items, because since I left college and then I went into the job market, and I finally knew what I needed to do. And I've gone to the corporate world, and I knew that to get your way ahead here, then somebody must listen to you, somebody must hear you. But how do I get heard? And this is one of the areas that I've had to work on. And do not underestimate the power of what we have been told. Reading the stories of others who have gone, either they are doing better, they're ahead of us, or they've gone before us. Because you see, every woman has a story, and some of them started from very far. I read the story of Maya Angelou, the writer who unfortunately we lost just a few years ago. And she had a very interesting story. And she said, I was almost like dumb. I couldn't speak for almost 7 years because she had gone through some very, very tough experiences personally. I think she had some sexual issues and assault and all that by a close relative. And she almost became dumb, as a girl. But the moment she started speaking, she spoke out, and she wrote poems, and she sang, and she spoke to big audiences and gave her story. And that really encouraged me, and I said, if she went through that, and she's where she is now, I know her because of the profile that she has been able to create, and she's so inspirational, then it can happen for anyone. And I can tell you, I've read there's a time, sorry, I'm a bit lazy right now, but there's a time I would read a book every month, read and finish and pack it. Some of them I'm reading the second time or the third time, if I love it so much. So it's an opportunity for us to cut through those barriers, the cultural barriers. And of course, you know, the way we are viewed as women also in this continent, I think it's a disadvantage because in the ranking, we are supposed to come quite low in the ranking. So if you are to take a man, a white man, white woman, Indian man, Indian woman, African man, African woman, we will be at the lowest level if you are African in that pyramid. So there are those natural barriers that we have to overcome. And that is why it calls for a lot of courage. And that is why we have been told that you really must rise up and go for it and take the risks that you need to take. But what I've also discovered is that the best way to overcome that is to become a master in what you do. Become so good in what you do that people cannot just ignore you. When you speak, they listen. And that has been my experience. When I speak, my board has to listen to what I'm saying. Not because I'm a woman, not so, but they just have to listen to me because they know that when I speak, I say something that makes sense, you know, to the business. And I think Alice has also talked about this and said, if they know that you're going to tell them something that builds their business, of course they want to have you on board. You will add value, but they will not have you there just for the sake of having you there. So I think it's work for us to really become masters in our craft, whatever area we are focused on. And sometimes you remember we also have to multi-skill. We have to become almost a jack of all trades, know a little bit about everything, but know a lot about something so that you are the first person that they call when they need advice or guidance or support in a certain sector. And I think that has really worked quite well for me. So it's a fact, it's a problem, it's an obstacle, it's a barrier for most of us. But what I'm saying is that it is a barrier that we can, with consistent work, overcome. But you see, of course, there's also a lot of sensitization, and I like what the network is doing in terms of just placing the agenda at the right place so that people can be discussing these things, the item on diversity, not just on gender, but also on various aspects of diversity. Well, once that message hits home, then people will be more accommodating to women and to other classes of people who have been marginalized or left out of the decision-making table. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Mary. Being a master of your own craft. So develop breadth, but also depth as well in your areas of expertise. So interesting comment here from Gladys, who says, you know, she was in a board, I think the only lady, and one of the board members used to call her a flower. And the man later told her that that was supposed to be a compliment. So Dr. Alice, we can't be like men, but I'm sure women bring unique set of skills to the table. So how do we turn that to our favor and use soft power to be able to move our agenda and actually be at the table and not on the menu?
One is, everyone I've met in my lifetime, they're unique. And you need to know that about yourself. There's some feature about you that no one else has. And that as long as you know that, and this is how I have learned throughout my lifetime, what I follow myself and what I feel in my heart, is that I'm unique in a certain way that no one else is. I know myself, I know what I want to do in life. I know what is my difference, period, from other people. You have to know your purpose. Like they said earlier, you have to know your value. You need to be willing to change, continue to grow, and love what you do. I've learned that education is what I truly love. And you would be surprised if you're doing something, not for what other people are doing, but for what you are doing. You will think outside of the box and you will be a flower. You know, it could have been a compliment because when you come in that room, you blossom. You have people thinking that you're growing or so. But again, when you want to get on the board, don't just choose any board. Choose a board that have values that you have, that you will have something in common. And that in that way, you will offer a lot to that board. You know, we are intelligent women, all of us, and we all have our uniqueness in all ways. And we just have to use it. Sometimes we don't know it. And just like you can find your mentor, find or mentors that you see that and start reading more about them. And I need to read more myself. And see how did they overcome their uniqueness? How did they get to that point? So identify 2 or 3 people that you would love to be a mentor and read about their history and see what they went, because everyone has a story, and see what did they do. And you'll be surprised, even though you're unique, you have something in common. So again, know your purpose and your value, because it is worth more than anything in the world. And everyone is special in their own way. And don't let anyone tell you different. I don't think, I don't let anyone tell me anything negative. And I always surround myself with positive people. You don't want to be in a room all the time with people that never have anything positive to say. You will never grow. Surround yourself with positive people. Choose your mentor. Read about it. Read an inspiring book every month, and you will be surprised how you can grow. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you, Dr. Alice. Know your value and be inspired by mentors who inspire you. Thank you for that. Gail, back to your book. I know one of the chapters, you talk about why men can be ugly and you can't. Interesting sentence. Tell us a little bit about that, sort of in the context of, women as we sit on boards, how we present ourselves at even to the leadership level.
Right.
Because I can see we're coming to the end. So I didn't want you to go without, touching on that particular topic.
That's a funny one. Nobody's ever asked me about that before. I think it's one of those kind of realities that guys' presentations, at least, and I think it still is true. I would say it used to be, but still is true. Don't seem to matter as much as women's. I think we've learned a little to be in this world since with COVID. We've learned to be able to be a little more casual and human about how we have to, and relax about how we can present ourselves. But when you walk in the room, in that first 3 or 4 minutes, people decide who you are. And you have a choice. You could either work at making sure that presentation is the one that fits the culture you're in, or fits your own distinct culture that you're willing to fight for. But I think you have to be aware that you don't have a long time to make a first impression. And so, are you thinking about it? And women, especially because they are the different one in the boardroom or in the corporate C-suite and the rest, are judged more quickly. And we may not like it because the intellectual value we bring to the room and the emotional and relational value is so important. but people are going to decide who you are in that first moment. And so I say to everybody, think about that, because they'll hear your words differently if you match the culture. I always kiddingly say to women, when you're getting ready to make a big presentation, don't change your hair color, don't change the way in which you dress, or any of those kind of things on the day you're getting ready to make the presentation. You know, we all think to ourselves, I want to look really great, and we may change those kind of things. Guys can be very simplistic. They'll spend half the meeting, if you've changed yourself, wondering what's different, or paying attention to how you look, not the words you're speaking. And you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So save the big changes for another day. But I just want to add one other quick thing, because in listening to what Mary had to say, Mary, I want to tell you that getting heard is still the #1 issue for women in virtually every culture. I was at a board meeting recently, and a woman who is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company said to me, I still have to fight to get heard in the room, even though I run the company. And so that's something that's just ongoing, because we were taught that to act like a lady by our mothers and our grandmothers and by our cultures. And somehow or other, that was about not speaking up in the public world. But the fascinating thing is, none of us have trouble speaking up in the personal world. Those of us who have children have no difficulty having our voice heard when we're speaking to them. So it's not that we can't do it. It's the atmosphere we're doing it in, the cultural place. But what I've seen in traveling the world talking about women's issues is the world has more in common in terms of gender issues. It doesn't matter where you go, the issues fundamentally are very, very similar. And getting heard is a huge one. Sometimes if there's another woman in the room, you can make a pact that when one of you speaks, the other one's going to continue the conversation on your point till it gets heard.
Thank you, Gail. Interesting perspective, around men and women, and how you present yourself and how you show up. This conversation could go on and on and on, and I'm afraid we are running out of time. We have about 5 more minutes before we wrap up. And so I'll ask each of you in 2 minutes to just give us your closing remarks, and perhaps, a piece of advice to all the ladies who've joined us this afternoon. What is the one thing you want to say to them? And Mary, we'll start with you.
Rose, those who know me, that I only talk one thing. I only talk authenticity. Authenticity, but don't give up also. And I'll just give you a very small story about one of my co-directors in equity. She was an auditor general for Rwanda. She's our vice chair lady at this time in the group company. And then they went for a meeting in the US, all the auditor generals of various, I think it was the Commonwealth or one of those bodies. And the auditor general for Pakistan came, a man, and found her there. And oh, you're from Rwanda? Yes. Okay, I have a gift for the auditor general. Please, can you take it to him? So I asked her, okay, so what did you do when you got the gift for the auditor general to take it to him? She laughed and said, wow. I just told him, thank you very much. I am the auditor general for the Republic of Rwanda. Story closed. So I want to wish you all well, ladies. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you for those, final words. And we will be looking to you to come on board as well and continue to engage with us as we learn your story and your journey within your career. Dr. Alice, any final words for the ladies before we let you get back into your duvet? I know it's probably, what, 5:30 now in the morning?
Oh, I'm up anyways, no problem. Well, the only thing I could think of is if is to find your passion, and you will find a job that you love for life. That's it. And thank you for having me. And I've learned a lot from all of the ladies. And thank you for your time. You did a great job, Rose.
Thank you very much. Find your passion. Thank you for that. Last but not least, Gail, final words as you perhaps in a minute tell us about what to expect in your book, She Wins, You Win. That's my next book that I'm going to read after I finish the one that I'm currently reading at the moment. So final remarks and tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, everybody stole my thunder. So my two favorite things, Alice said, passion, you need to do what you love. Don't suffer through it. If you love it, you'll be good at it. I think one of the things that mistakes women make is they keep trying to get better at what they're not good at. And I'm always like, figure out how somebody else can do what you're not good at and you don't love, and figure out how to do more of what you're good at and what you love. And then Mary said my favorite word, which is authenticity. It's like we are people who succeed are themselves. It's very interesting to watch, but people trust people who are authentic. Then they connect with them. You're good enough. You don't need to change yourself. You may need to learn to play a smarter game sometime, but you are good enough. And you should not ever change yourself and lose your own personal authenticity. And I think, my final thing is go for it. Thanks, Rose, for a wonderful panel. And I love meeting everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all. Authenticity, passion, go for it. We couldn't have ended on a better note. Thank you, ladies, for attending the session. Before we go, allow me to invite our chair, Catherine, to just give some final remarks and to thank our speakers for speaking up this early morning in the States, and for Mary as well for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this afternoon. So over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rose. Ladies, this was an awesome conversation. And I want to take this opportunity to extract something else from you. Can we have you back very, very soon next year? Because I think the greater body of members need to hear these stories so that we can keep inspiring them. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was an awesome, awesome discussion. And we will reach out to you if you don't mind, so that you can continue inspiring the greater number of members that we have. Dr. Milton, we have a surprise for you later this year when we visit a children's home. She does love little girls, and she has sent gifts all the way from the US to children's homes here in Kenya, and we will send you a little surprise about that. Thank you all.
I'm gonna say something.
Yes, will do. Thank you very, very much. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you who joined the call today. Gail, amazing, amazing conversations. And I'm sure Bookstop is not going to rest this evening. I'm sure so many people will be rushing there for your books. Thank you so much, Mary. Always an honor and a pleasure to have you on board. And thank you for agreeing to mentor the ladies within our network. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, ladies. It has been an awesome session. I cannot believe we've been speaking for the last 1.5 hours. As I said, it could go on and on and on. Keep well, keep safe. Remember, you don't build businesses, you build people, and it's the people who build the businesses. Keep safe and God bless. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you, Rose.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.